So tell me a little bit about where you're from.
I'm from Van, Texas, as mentioned earlier, but I grew up in that area. My family was given a land grant there from the Demo Land Office back in the Republic of Texas days. So that would go way back.
Wow.
We're not on that land anymore. But, it eventually had to get sold off just because my family needed the land at the time. Or whoever family member then needed the money. She was a widow, so she sold it off. But, so we have it. So I've been there, went to school in Van, and my dad went to school there. And I joined the military in 1988. Saw the range a little bit, but then I did 30 years there and retired in Abilene at Dykes Air Force Base. And that was my last assignment. We liked Abilene so much that I retired first, and my wife retired the next year. She retired out of Korea. So when I retired, they sent her to Korea for a year without me. And then after that year, she decided, you know what, I don't want to be a part anymore. Because we were apart quite a bit. I was 3 years in New Mexico. She was in Wichita Falls.
That's hard.
And then I went back to Wichita Falls. We were there for 2 years. They sent me to Korea for a year by myself. And then after I got back from Korea, they sent us to Abilene. And then I retired a few years later. And then they sent her to Korea. And she, let's just get out of this job. So
be together. Yeah.
Yeah.
So did you meet in the military? We
did. Yeah, we did. We were both doing the same job. We were both aircraft armament specialists. So we fixed the weapon systems on fighters and bombers, and we loaded the bombs, fused the bombs, put them on the planes.
How cool.
Yeah.
How risky is that?
It's not as risky as you sound. They're pretty safe. It takes a lot to actually make one go off. There's lots of steps. So they're pretty foolproof, so it's not it.
So then you both weren't from West Texas, but you got there as soon as you could. Is that right?
Right. She's from Los Angeles.
Yes.
So she met me, and she's a country boy from Texas and knows how to grow things and hunt his own food, raise cattle. She said she needed me for the zombie apocalypse. That's what she said.
That's my dream. So I moved to Texas from DC during the COVID lockdowns, and I was seeking my doomsday apocalypse helper. And so we have a little bit of grass out there, and we've been growing some veggies. But it's been my plan, my goal. What stuff do you grow? That's awesome.
Well, right now I'm not growing anything but wildflowers for bees, because I've recently got into bees. I'm a beekeeper.
That's amazing. I want to have some bees.
And you can put them right here in your yard.
We can. And I'm very interested because one of my best friends, her husband has some bees. And it's an amazing hobby. And glad I'm not allergic, but I definitely want to do those. And chickens.
Sure. Well, as many times as I've been stung in the last month and a half, I'm glad I'm not allergic to it.
Oh, no. Is it really? Yeah, she said it's been fine, but why have you been stung so much?
Well, the first time was I did a bee removal at someone's house.
Okay.
The bees had built a hive inside the wall.
Oh.
And so we had to go get them out. And we use this fancy vacuum that sucks all the bees out. And even though I had a suit on, sometimes they get through, and mainly in the gloves on the hands. So I got stung 8 times that day on my hands. And then when I worked the bees at my house, sometimes they get through. I'll get 1 or 2 stings there. Or they'll wait till I take the suit off and come find. They've done that before too.
Well, Commissioner Buckingham knows what she's hiring. As the GLO, you know your land. That is very cool. And how did you get involved in politics? If you want to tell our listeners, I'm sure they'd be interested, from going from the military to, you have a lot of jack of all trades over here. Been in some commercials. You guys are checking out this man on the film here. He's been in some TV shows here. So how'd you get into politics?
So I don't know if you remember Bobby Hansen. She worked in the district office there in Abilene.
Yes, sir.
So when I retired from Dias, I had a retirement luncheon. Well, she and her husband were there. Her husband was in the military. And after the luncheon, she asked, "What are you going to do in retirement?" And I said, "Whatever I want." I haven't really thought about it. I just want to enjoy retirement for a little while. And she said, "Well, how would you like to work for a congressman?" Mm-hmm. And that was still Joe Gary. That sounds very interesting. I always had an interest in politics. And so that would be very, and then the district, you're helping the constituents, which is right important too. And Jody always said that, Jody Arrington always said, well, hey, there are profit-oriented people, there are service-oriented people. And I spent 30 years in the service. So I was service-oriented. So this was a great transition from the military to go into federal government and working to help constituents. So I interviewed with Russell.
Yes. Yeah.
And so next thing you know, I got hired and they put me in charge of constituent services at the time. And so it worked out great. About 60% of our caseload was veterans. So that worked out awesome. And I was able to help veterans and work at the VA and different organizations. So it's good.
I love that. Well, side note for the audience, Glenn reached out to me a little while ago saying, listen to my podcast, and I heard that I work with Jody. So shout out to Jody Arrington, our former boss, who wanted to send us to and Russell.
Yes.
Such a small world. And we definitely exchanged some emails like 12 years ago, probably, just about constituent stuff.
Yeah,
right? It was. I was
flags. I think you were you in charge of flags?
I was in charge of flags.
That's right.
I was in charge of the TexasLege, the flags. We had 10 interns one summer. Very fun. Some of them are now in Austin, which is really cool. One of them came and lobbied me, actually. I was like, you're all grown up. And then one of them came over to me at one of the Senate dinners. And he was a staffer in the Senate, too. So it was a really small world. There's definitely some cool alumni that come out of that. So I love that. And then what got you in with the GLO, where you're in the position you're in now? And let's talk more about what you're doing.
Okay. So once I left Jody Arrington's office, I went to go help a friend with this plumbing company for just a brief period. And it was a temporary job.
Sure.
But I thought after that I would completely retire and I wouldn't do anything else. I would just enjoy life. Right? But Ben Bailey, who was working in the Senate office for then Senator Buckingham, reached out and said he owned a business. And he said, hey, I just don't have time to be her district rep. Would you be interested in this? I would be. Yeah, I think it'd be a fun job. So then Adrian, who reached out, and I met with him and the senator for coffee, and we had a discussion. And I went to work for her part time, handled that northern part of Senate District 24 constituent services again, and it just worked out. Met with a lot of local leaders and voice their concerns to the senator every week. We had phone calls and we get together and talk about all the issues going on in the district. We're just kind of eyes and ears for her, boots on the ground for that Senate district. And I enjoyed that. And so then when she ran for land commission, she said, once you get elected, she said, hey, you want to continue to work for me? I said, I do. I just don't want to move to Austin. She's like, no, you can stay in Abilene. My daughter was in college there. So and at the time, my wife had a job just out of retirement. So we just weren't ready to move. So we were able to stay in Abilene. And I stayed with and I went with the GLO. And she asked me, what do you want to do at the GLO? Because there's many departments. And I said, well, I did 30 years in the military, 15 of those years in Texas. And I had never heard of the Veterans Land Board. I said, let me do something with veterans. With that, I want to tell people about the Veterans Land Board, because they don't know about it. It won't exist. So that's basically what I spend most of my time doing. I still meet with the local community leaders and voice their concerns about, they might need community grants for flood mitigation, things like that from the GLO. But most of my energy is focused on veterans issues.
That's amazing. Well, thank you for your service. And they're lucky to have you. And obviously, Commissioner Buckingham loves you, because otherwise she wouldn't allow you to be out in West Texas. So that's very, very impressive. So tell people who don't know and aren't as familiar, what is the General Land Office?
Well, it has about 800 people on staff, a little over 800. So it's a huge organization. We manage 13.1 million acres of land. It's owned by the state of Texas. The leasing of that land and the mineral rights of that land, the money we make off of that goes into the permanent school fund, which currently is about $62 billion. And the permanent school fund was established, I think it was 1857, if I remember right, to fund public education. And we can't spend the principal. So we give the interest to the State Board of Education. Well, the State Board of Education manages what the money is invested in. So we get the interest every year to fund public education K through 12. And this year, it'll be about $4.8 billion compared to $2.6 billion last year.
Wow.
So we're doubling, and a lot of that has to do with the commissioner finding other revenue sources for the permanent school fund, such as carbon sequestration. She bought a 353,000 acre ranch in Rooster County that we lease out. And it can be leased for cattle raising, hunting, and we own the mineral rights to a lot of the land that we have. And so, like I said, they lease it out for minerals. And we also are responsible for 10 miles of the Gulf out into the Gulf. So we have that as well.
And are you involved specifically the agency in regulating kind of the distance that we have Texas out the shore and all that? Or is that just like set in stone? It's 10 miles, that's it. That's always interesting me.
Well, I'm not sure how the 10 miles came about. I'm not sure that we did that, but 10 miles is what we have. It's just considered part of Texas.
Yes.
But one thing that the commissioner has done since she's been in office is you think of securing a border. There was an island, and you may have, I don't know if you've seen it. It made the media nationally last year. There was an island in the Rio Grande that nobody really laid claim to.
I did see that, yeah.
Other than the cartel. The cartels had things going on the island that most people don't want to know about. And so the commissioner, basically looking at the treaty between us and Mexico that we own everything from the middle of the Rio Grande north. Well, over the last couple hundred years, the water changes the path a little bit.
Sure.
So when you replot and show what's north of the middle, it turned out that island was on our side. And so she went in, cleaned it out, put BPS out there, and they cleaned it up, and we got rid of all that nastiness that the cartel had going on the island. And so, she's making Texas a little bigger.
I love that. Yeah, that's a pretty cool claim when they just say that she was just done. What else is kind of the land commissioner's role?
So we also do oil spill cleanups, manage the erosion, the beach erosion, barrier reef restoration, things such as that. We have about 50 folks, I believe it's about 50 folks down in 5 different areas around the coast that handle oil spill funds.
Right.
So we help also with the community grants. So a lot of the grants that come from federal funding, HUD and things such as that, will come into the GLO, and then GLO helps disperse that. Mm-hmm. Such as after Hurricane Harvey, about 10,000 homes that the GLO has helped through these grants help distribute the money to rebuild these homes, specifically for low to middle income families.
That's a very big job. And hurricanes, disaster, that anything that affects land, and specifically we had these tragic floods that just recently happened. What's been the impact and kind of your role in helping there?
So in San Angelo, that's only about an hour and a half. So San Angelo's in my area. So after that, I went down and met with the mayor and worked with the chamber. And we're trying to figure out ways to help them. So you think that the GLO is not the first responder in something like that?
Sure.
They can help with prevention, before an event. They can also help with after the event. But there are other agencies out there that can be the first responder or something like that. But if we can help them come up with a plan to prevent it from happening again in the future, or help mitigate the damage, that maybe they do some buyouts in some very flood-prone areas. Maybe they buy out some of those old buildings to make it like a floodplain area, and or get some grants to reroute the better sewer system for the community. Things such as that.
And what would you say are some of the biggest misconceptions people have? Lawmakers have about the GLO and just the public in general. If you could explain it in a sentence.
Yeah, yes. I think what they don't know what we do, so they don't know how to act. It's helping us. And so I think the Commissioner Buckingham has really done a great job in getting the team out and letting the people know. whether it be the team here in Austin that goes to Capitol visits with legislators, or people like me who visit with local and county officials and say, hey, this is who we are, and this is what we do. Because they just don't, I think lawmakers, if they don't know what we do, they don't know how to help us. And so I think that's the key. They have to know what all we're responsible for. And people think land office, the land office was established in 1836, which, by the way, predates South's governor by 9 years. So we're the oldest.
Whoa, the oldest agency?
Oldest agency. Yeah.
Wow, I did not know that. That makes sense.
Well, it was originally mapping out the land. So we did the bounty grants, basically military bounty grants, where bounty warrants, where they gave out land to people who helped us fight for independence of Mexico, because we didn't have any money.
Sure.
So they promised them land. Well, somebody had to track what tracts of land were given. So I was, the land office that did that. Well, it's morphed into a lot more than that all the time. And so we still do that for veterans, in the sense that after World War II, that the Veterans Land Board came about to help veterans buy land at a low interest rate. And now it's expanded into, now you can buy land, you can buy home, you can get home improvement loans. We also run 10 state veterans nursing homes,
wow.
5 state veteran cemeteries. The money we make off of the land loans and the home loans, improvement loans, goes towards funding those homes and cemeteries. So we're a state agency that generates all revenue, which is kind of cool.
That's very cool.
Totally reliant on taxpayer fundings.
Wow. So 800 people get pretty much covered, right?
Yeah, that's right.
That's amazing. So you're, in your role with the legislature specifically, sounds like you're educating them a lot on what you do and the different programs you have and departments. What have you had to do this past legislative session? And obviously ongoing, we've got a lot of the disaster flood conversations happening, a lot of that through special, but what was your role and GLO's role through this legislative session specifically, and trying to align your priorities?
So the GLO itself, which I didn't get involved with so much, I'm not in Austin, so
Sure.
I'll meet with our local rep, Stan Lambert, or
Sure.
we'll talk about things. We have Senator Charles Terry, who's also our senator, which before redistricting, Senator Perry and Senator Buckingham shared that. Well, he had North Abilene, she had South Abilene. So we're actually very fortunate to have 2 votes in the Senate, basically.
Sure.
And they run lockstep most of the time. So it was nice to have 2 votes in the Senate for an issue that we really needed help with. But anyway, we did get a new bill this legislative session that helped with. So before, we were capped at 7 cemeteries across the state. So that's for state veteran cemeteries.
What do you mean by that?
We weren't allowed to have no more than 7.
Oh,
Anybody.
why is that?
That was just how it was written down, and how it was. And so we actually had a Senate bill passed, and that was lifted that cap to where we can build more than 7 if we need to. They removed the cap altogether. And so, how we get those cemeteries, that people will do a survey. It has to be a certain veteran population. Lots of different numbers that go into that. And the thing that we can't do is we can't purchase the land to put it on. So the land is normally donated. So, for example, Tyler, Texas has been pushing to get a cemetery out there. So all of our cemeteries, I think the one in Killeen is probably the furthest east cemetery.
It's not too east. Right. There's a lot more Texas than that. I might be
wrong, but it's pretty, I believe that's the furthest east cemetery we have. And so,
okay.
And if you check TxDOT, 87% of the population of Texas lives on the east side of I-35. So,
wow.
That means there's probably a lot of veterans over in that area as well. So there's probably a need. We do have a state veterans home in Tyler, but there is probably a need. So, a lot of times the communities come together, or counties, and say, hey, or somebody will donate the land, because if that's the first step. You can get somebody to donate the land, it makes the makes it a whole lot easier to get a cemetery built.
Who has to do that? Who has to get the land donated?
So, if it was somebody, usually the county will work with that. And if it was in my county, for example, that I help with, I would help them. I would try to work with them and say, hey, what can we do to make this happen?
So can someone donate land to Texas is what you're telling
Sure.
me? I could say I have 1,000 acres. I want to donate it to Texas.
I want to donate it. I want to donate it for a veteran cemetery. I want to donate for a veteran's home.
Yes.
Something like that. So yeah, they can do that. Sometimes, the cities, especially economic development, they own land, that they want to help bring in development. They want to bring in businesses. Sometimes they might say, hey, you can donate a portion of that. In Fort Worth, we just opened up our 10th Texas State Veterans Nursing Home, which opened in February, and that land was donated. So once the land is donated, that's the first big step, and then you work with the VA, because the VA pays for the funding, the grants to help build that stuff.
I was going to say, what role does the federal government have versus the state, and especially with the veterans issues the VA brought up?
So the VA will fund building our homes and building our cemeteries.
Sure.
We also get inspected by the VA. So in the 5 cemeteries that we have, and the 5th one is not quite open. It'll be open in December in Lubbock. We have a new one going in. But they'll come in and so when you pull into one of our cemeteries and you pull into a national cemetery, and a lot of people don't know the difference unless they see the name on the outside. Yeah. Once you pull into the cemetery, they look very, very similar because we have the same standards. The VA will come and say, hey, your headstone needs to be this tall, your grass needs to be this deep. And they'll come in and inspect your records, and says we are funded by the VA. And then once it's built, we take over. And with our cemeteries, what we've done over the last few years is we've given ownership of operating the cemetery itself to either the city or the county. We had before that, and Abilene was the most recent one, I believe, that we just did. We just did it last year, year before, where we were running the cemeteries, but we were using a temp agency to provide to get the employees to run the cemetery. Well, that's not a very permanent job for temp, for people.
Sure.
So we've talked with the county commissioners and the city council and said, hey, why don't we make this one of your departments? Either one. If the county wanted it, that's fine. If the city wanted it, in Abilene, the city took it because the cemetery is actually within the city limits, but it's not within the county. That makes sense. So the county commissioners said, hey, we're not really in our jurisdiction. But the county it was in was so small that they just didn't have the bandwidth to actually fund it or keep up with the demands or fill it with employees.
Sure.
And it's a very small county, Jones County. But we have the city of Abilene. We took over the cemetery, and then we provide funding for everything. So we give them the funding. Actually, you can give them a little extra for the HR department to have to do with all the employees. But the employees now have a permanent job with benefits, with a retirement plan, unlike this temp agency. So we had a high turnover. So now we have people that already were living in the community anyway, that now have a vested interest in staying with us and hopefully with a good career.
That's awesome. And obviously the veterans issues are near and dear to your heart. And you're also talking to people all the time. So what are some of the biggest problems, as you speak to people, boots on the ground, to our veterans that they're facing that, you're addressing just right now? Well,
so some of the things they bring up are not necessarily Veterans Land Board related, but I know people. I worked in the federal for a while, so I don't just say it's not my role. I try to help them. A lot of times it's, hey, I can't get into the cemetery, and I don't know why. They want to pre-register for the cemetery. I can't get pre-registered for the cemetery, so I'll try to help them with that. Or they have issues getting their land loan approved, and a lot of it has to do with this that the elderly veterans are maybe not used to the technology that we use now to application process. So I've sat down with them. I actually will sit down with them and help them walk through the application process. I mean, they can still call our office and have an application mailed. It's just going to slow the process down. Because you have to mail it to you, you have to fill out the report, all back. But if you can do all your application process online, I'm always available to help those folks do that, because those, our veteran population, aging veteran population, like most of our World War II guys our Vietnam veterans are now our older generation. Wow. And a lot of those folks don't use technology. They don't text. They may get online for something, but they don't do a lot. So I'll go in and help them. I mean, I'll go to their house. It doesn't matter. Just to help them if they want to get pre-registered for the cemetery. We have on-site representatives. Each of our cemeteries has a GLO, one GLO employee that actually works for the GLO, our on-site representatives. I'll throw them to them, or I'll have them fill it out along themselves. Because
that's awesome.
Yes, can be buried there, or their spouse can be buried there. So, most our parents, and families can be buried there.
So you're saying you're the tech guru? A lot of these folks out there will have to come steal you away. Come over here.
My grandson would not say I'm the tech guru. An elderly veteran might say I'm the tech guru.
To each their own. To each their own. Well, I know that's definitely the area you're most passionate about, but you do dabble in so many different areas. So I'm wanted to chat a little bit about energy policy. I know that you mentioned kind of your land use, leasing, and you manage millions of acres, right? More than any other state. So how does Texas change some of these, create opportunities from energy development? I know that you mentioned kind of the minerals and, someone could lease those out. That's amazing and really innovative. So what other kind of opportunities are coming from?
So right now, and just to, some people ask why does the state of Texas own 13 million acres? Why does it? But so when we were accepted into the United States in 1845, we kept our land. They wouldn't take it as payment for our debt, right? So we used the land to generate revenue. Mm-hmm. And so that's how we ended up. And now we didn't have 13 million, and it's ebbed and flowed. Land commissioners can sell some and they can buy some. Commissioner Buckingham is not in the market to sell anything, but she is in the market to buy some. So she doesn't want to sell anymore land because the money generates revenue for kids.
Sure.
So right now, out west, you have the fracking, more fracking, and then the water that comes up with that. And so right now there's a program where they're taking that wastewater, which is really good for nothing, can't drink it, and they're cleaning it and irrigating crops as a test for now to see how that works. And so instead of just dumping that water, rainwater is a precious resource, especially in Texas, that now, hey, we can now use that water for something else. So that's probably the latest and greatest and innovative thing that we've done when it comes to energy and resources.
Interesting. That was Senator Perry's bill, right? The one that took that?
I don't remember if that was his bill. I do remember the bill, but I should know that since I'm in his district, and I just forgot it. Sorry.
Tell me more about that one. I did hear about that one from actually a skeptic of the bill. Actually.
Really?
Yes. I think it was environmental use of the water being. How could you tell that it wasn't had anything wrong with the water and it was safe to put on the crops?
Well, yeah, I mean, they have ways of testing water.
Sure.
Of testing, the contaminants in it. And as somebody who's lived in a place been deployed to places where you throw a hose into a swamp and you suck it through this machine and you drink it, whatever comes out the other end, I know we have the technology to clean water. Because when that hose was laying in the swamp, I didn't think I was going to drink anything that came out of that. But once it came out the other end of that machine, it was good water. Plus, by the time you're thirsty. But
for sure. I love it.
So we had the authorizing water reuse and desalinization on state. House Bill 2031 and House Bill 497, Senate Bill 991 were all
Okay.
bills that I found that had to do with that. So.
Industrious. So Texas, we have kind of a wild place. We've got coast, we've got mountains, we've got hill country, we've got forests. It's an amazing place. With coastal preservation and coastline, what are some things that the GLO and you're working on?
So, well, the GLO, we do have the coastal management program, and they're the restoring the reefs, oysters, commercial oyster fishing, and so restoring some of those reefs. Some of it was destroyed by, remember the Deepwater Horizon incident?
Yes.
Back when, there's a fund that came out of that we also administer some of those funds to help repair a lot of things along the coast, dune erosion and beach erosion, and the reef, rebuilding the reefs system. There's lots of things to do. Floodgates,
Yes.
In Houston Bay.
That's
to
right.
help mitigate that storm surge from hurricanes. It was last year, the commissioner went to Europe because they have some flood mitigation or for hurricanes over there. And she went and kind of looked at what they did and looking at ways to lessen the impact of that storm surge when it comes in places like Houston, the coast, and then there's one city, I believe it was Liberty City that she was mentioning last week when we were talking, that is actually sinking, and so and New York City sinking, but that's not Texas. But I think she said that, I believe it was Liberty City, that from the time she was a kid there into now, it's sank 5 feet.
Oh wow!
She's not that old, so it's not that long ago. And
what technology can you use to stop somewhere sinking?
Well, you start building that beach line up, and there's smart people, a lot smarter than me, and know exactly what to do. And they think that part of that was just due to taking all that water from underneath for drinking water and causing some of that sinking as well.
Interesting.
And we have a big drinking water problem. As they say, that whiskey's for drinking and water's for fighting. That's what we say in West Texas.
I need to go out there more. Are there any other kind of leasing trends you're seeing or think developers or entrepreneurs should be watching in this space?
So we started doing carbon sequestration.
Yes.
So that's another fairly new revenue source that we have. The companies to basically put it back into the ocean feed floor and the connection, lease it out. And we've got some big leases on mobile and things such as that. So it's actually something else, and which is why our permanent store fund is growing as much as it has,
Almost double.
Right.
That's insane.
Well, I believe when she took office, we were at the balance was about 56 billion. And I think now we're about 62 billion, which is huge in 2.5 years. To grow that much. So
what do you think that's down to specifically? Just the commissioner's innovative plans, or what do you think it's down to?
Yeah, I do. I think with the fact that she's totally engaged in focusing on, hey, how can we generate more revenue for public education? And that, for example, the Brewster County Ranch that she purchased this last year, 350,000 acres. Well, there's very, very small segment of the population that can afford to buy 53,000 acres. And if it doesn't sell, and they've been for sale for a long time. If it doesn't sell, what do people end up knowing? Land that can't sell, and they need to sell. They break it up into pieces, right? Well, with all the dark sky initiative, and you have all the, you have this observatory out there. We need to keep that. So getting all the light pollution, we want to keep that as nice as we can, or just like as natural as we can. And so she was able to get the land office to buy off from purchasing it. And there was already lessees on there, and there were I think there were 4 lessees. Only one of them didn't stay, but she allowed the other 3 to stay, and they're leasing land for cattle. And our office in Alpine basically tells them, hey, this is how many cattle you can run per section, 640 acres.
How many is that?
And out there, it's about 4 animal units per section, if I remember right. So, which, think about, you can only run 4 animals units per 640 acres because it's desert, and so we got to prevent overgrazing. And so those guys were leasing, 100,000 acres it's a lot of land. And to them, though, that's a small place. But, it's relative to where you live, they consider a small place. Well,
I love it out there. I spend as much time as I can out there. We did a road trip for my birthday and like for Thanksgiving. And I love to go and just go out to Laitas and in more of like the Marfa area recently too, which was very cool. But I went up to the Dark Skies Observatory and I did the star party.
Yes.
Have you done that before?
No, I've had it on my calendar a couple of times and had to back out. But so is it worth the trip?
It's really worth the trip. Okay. And the only thing is it got dark, fully dark, so much later than I thought.
Yeah.
To actually it was, 11 o'clock at night and finally it was dark. So we were falling asleep past my bedtime.
Well past my bedtime.
But it was great. And I'm glad that we stayed up for it. It was beautiful. I mean, I've never seen the sky so clear. So,
and
what are the biggest challenges with dealing with the federal government?
Response time. So a lot of times it is 1 to 2 years after an event before we'll ever see money from the federal government come in to help. And that's probably, and a way is if we can, something if I had a magic wand, that'd be what I would fix is what can we do to get that money faster to help our people, and what I like, when I look at our you follow us on social media and it'll show Commissioner Buckingham, or they'll hand the keys to someone who had their house rebuilt because maybe they were low income. And so we help with that a lot. And these people need a place to live.
Right.
Their homes have been destroyed. And it takes a long time. We're still working on some of those hurricane homes from heart. And so, I mean, it's been a long process. And I think with the federal government takes so long to get that money to us, it's hard to do without when you have it.
And it's tough. What would you say has improved the most since you've seen it?
Well, I think advocacy from the state level, one of the things that I think a lot of people did, transparency from our agency. One of the first things you see when you go on our website is that, hey, full transparency. We want to be transparent in everything we do. We have a team that does, that goes out and lets people know, in which I'm part of. I'll do outreach as well. A lot of what I do is outreach and letting people know, hey, we're here to help. And so the advocacy from our agency and also working with state agencies and the folks that are here in Austin and our government relations that are going to the Capitol and actually talking to lawmakers, hey, this is what we do. When we ask for money, we hope you understand why we're asking for it, because this is what we do with the money. So I think from the state level, the advocacy and just the education, the awareness, and then being transparent what we did. You can view all of our leases online. You can view, and people that can go online and pay the royalty fees to us and from the lease rights. And there's a lot of things you can go online, and the public has access to all that. Our land board meeting tomorrow is open to the public.
Right.
So
I'm glad about that.
Yes.
We'll be watching those. So is this new technology then that the GLOs kind of enforced and put in?
I don't know if it's new. It's new to me.
Sure.
I've only been with them for 2.5 years.
Yeah.
So we do some of the GIS mapping and what's, we also have the Archives and Records Division. So when we start looking at the boundaries of property, and we have all the maps from dating way back, the original field notes from the surveyors from 1800s. And so people can view that online for free, or they can go to our records division and they can go in and actually look at the notes. And so if they ever, think landman, if a landman needed to go and check, original land boundaries, and it was because there was a conflict, they always go look at our records. And while they're there, they can hold the original letter that Stephen L. Austin wrote to the Mexican government way back when. I mean, we have all that stuff.
It's amazing what you've been able to then archive and the data that's out there from the government in general. So sounds like you're very into transparency.
Yes, and the digitization of those documents, since the commissioner elected, we have really worked hard. And then one of the things we figured out when she first took office is that Archives and Records Department in the Stephen F. Austin building did not have the right or backup generator for the air conditioning. It has to be kept at a certain temperature to protect those documents.
Of course.
So she had to spend quite a bit of money to get that. But it's important. Those documents are hundreds of years old. Last time I was down there, I got to hold a letter. I was able to hold a letter from General Sam Houston. And, so it's just those documents, our history. And I was able to look at the document that my great-great-grandfather signed for the land grant that he was given. And so, just people that are into genealogy or checking out land disputes and schools, the education part. The schools can bring go on field trips and go down there and look at Texas maps and archives. And, the Alamo falls into that because we also have the Alamo, which is under a huge renovation project right now.
As we close, any kind of takeaways for businesses or people who want to get involved with the work that you do or contact you directly? Is there any way you want to shout out how you can do that? Or?
Yeah, if there's somebody that wants to, if you go to our website, glo.texas.gov, and there are ways you can apply for leasing land. You can see the land's available. You can, the airport, that regional airport, it used to be a regional airport in Austin.
Okay.
It's now an acting studio.
I didn't know that.
There's they have it set up with different studios for movie sets.
Oh.
Well, the GLO owns that. And so we regularly lease it out. And I believe we still have a restaurant down on the coast that we lease out. And that, like I said, all that money comes down to help public education. So if people are looking to lease land or lease something from the GLO, you go on our website and there's a lease application. You look at if you want to lease it for grazing cattle or hunting, or if it's commercial real estate available, you can definitely apply to lease it.
That's amazing. Wow. Well, thank you. Thanks for sharing all that. And thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Pleasure.